but I'm in charge. Like you can look within yourself and look what's going on emotionally before just putting the power in someone else's hand and being like, numb my pain with an injection or give me something that'll make this go away. It's like, it's never going to go away if you don't deal with the root cause.
I gotta get myself a little more faith, a little more love.
I'm your host, Christa Bigler, and I'm going to guess we have at least one thing in common, that we're both in pursuit of a less stressed life. On this show, I'll be interviewing experts and sharing clinical pearls from my years of practice to support high-performing, health-savvy women in pursuit of abundance and a less stressed life. One of my beliefs is that we always have options for getting the results we want, so let's see what's out there together.
Just keep breaking. I gotta get myself a little more faith, a little more love.
Today on The Less Stressed Life, I have Alexis Joseph, who is a dietitian blogger and the mama behind Homosapien. I just asked how to say it properly, and my brain doesn't want to say it right. The food blog, which you've probably read, you've probably landed on. I know I have for years. The food blog she created in 2011 in order to inspire others to eat happy, healthy, and balanced. She's also the co-founder of a Columbus-based restaurant group, Alchemy. She uses her passion for cooking and wellness as fuel to help others ignite a more joyful relationship with food. Through years of experience coaching individual clients, consulting with food brands, and conceptualizing restaurants, she combines approachable recipes with nutrition education to bring peace and joy back to the table. But speaking of peace and joy, I ran into Alexis in person for the first time a couple of months ago at an event, and she was talking about having a passion for the nervous system because of her own personal story. I thought it would be fun to have her come. I am also nerding out on this topic in general for years. And so I thought her story would be fun to come on and talk about. I think you'll see why very shortly. So welcome to the show, Alexis.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, to chat.
Yeah. All right. So when I was standing behind you in the buffet line in April, you were talking about having back pain and how you resolved it. And this takes me back. We're 400 some, I don't know what episode we're on now, but we're 400 some episodes in 2025. This podcast started in 2017. And the very second episode was about debilitating discs and back pain. And it was really interesting. It was a little different perspective, but I think it's just cool how we all come full spectrum. And I remember the conversation there was like reducing inflammation from other modalities. But I want to just hear that origin story a little bit. You're living your life, you're being a mom, you're blogging, you're doing all the things, and then suddenly life happens. So will you tell us a little bit about what happened and the pain that you were experiencing?
Yeah, for sure. So just to preface it, like I had some interesting back pain just like ever since college. Like I remember I sat down on a floor in a lecture in college and had like intense sciatica that I never had in my life. So like looking back, I'm like, this is all starting to make sense. But anyway, I'd been feeling good for a while. I had the previous summer, like crazy hip pain. Like we landed in San Diego and I could barely walk. I'm like, what is wrong with my body? Is it because I had kids? What's happening? So I was like in physical therapy. I was having tailbone pain, just really random stuff. And then I started feeling this like back pain that was just growing in intensity to the point where I looked in the mirror one day and my gait was like so crooked. I looked like someone completely shifted my hips like 6 inches in the wrong direction. And my mom was in town and I was like, look at my like body, like something is seriously wrong with me. And I was doing all these different things. And I got to a point where one day I was like in such excruciating pain, I couldn't even get up. I couldn't do anything. And I ended up getting like a same day MRI. And the results were you have an extruded disc, which is like the most intense kind of, there's like level of herniated disc. They're like, you have an extruded disc, you have a herniated disc, you have this like wearing on your constituents, you have all these different things. And I went from 9 out of 10 pain to 12 out of 10 pain. Obviously, fear just exacerbating everything I was already feeling. And just found myself doing everything known to man to cure my back pain. That's like how it started.
And I think sometimes we work through our toolbox that we know. And I actually use back pain as an example to educate about what I think of as the health triad, which is like we have these different lenses we can look through each symptom. We can look through the nutritional chemical component, like an inflammatory diet, But then like the structural component, and naturally with back pain, usually you're going to go structural, right? And then sometimes people might come over to the nutrition side and say, oh, what could I do with nutrition? And then the other angle is emotional and energetic. And so I'd love to hear, what you were throwing at first. And also I can imagine that this just was very like jarring for your life, because I think, it said somewhere in my notes, like you were usually when you have a herniated disc or a really extreme one, you're debilitated. Like you might be crawling around on the floor. So I'm not sure what that was like for you and how long that was going on. And then what did you throw at him?
Yeah. So at my worst, I was literally on the floor. I remember crying on the ground, laying on my stomach because it was like the most comfortable position, and just like saying to my mom, who was just visiting, I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to lift my 1-year-old. I don't know how I'm like, I had to figure out people like driving to get my son from school. It was like a nightmare. And I didn't know. I'm like, why is this happening to me? Like, why am I suddenly unable to move? So I got this MRI and they immediately want to do an injection. And I'm like, well, let me like digest. Let me try physical therapy. I don't just want to immediately numb the pain. Let me just figure out what's going on. I started doing physical therapy with this McKenzie method that I'm on Instagram. I'm like, I have these terrible disc issues. Send me all your recommendations. So everyone's do the McKenzie method in PT, do acupuncture, do, these certain supplements. So I'm going to a ton of PT. I'm doing this like really intense neuromuscular massage that I thought was helping. It would help fix my shift, and then it would like immediately go back. I was like reading books on back pain, which is how I stumbled upon Dr. Sarno's book about back pain, which changed my life. But yeah, I was doing all the like traditional methods. And then I think a few months passed, and I looked at my physical therapist and I'm like, I'm just like not getting better. I would get better and then I would regress. And I'm like, I'm in PT 3 times a week. I'm doing massage. I'm doing all these things. I'm doing ice. I'm doing, everything, heating pads. And I just felt like super discouraged. And at that point, I scheduled an injection and did that whole thing. I think I might have felt better for a tiny bit, but then like back to square one. And I'm like, literally nothing is working. How am I going to live my life? Then someone messages me on Instagram and she says, you're going to think I'm crazy, but I think this is TMS. You need to read the book. She was like, didn't your brother die last year? Haven't you been going through all this stuff? I think you need to read this book, Mind Your Body. And at that point, I was so sick of nothing working. I'm like, sure, I'll read a book. What do I have to lose? Read the book. And that just changed everything. I think I actually I didn't read Mind Your Body first. I read Dr. Sarno's book on
Mind Body Prescription.
I read Mind Body Prescription. I also read his other book on back pain. He has another. And then I read Mind Your Body. It's like I already knew all of it at that point. So when I read the Mind Body Prescription, you're not supposed to talk about timelines and all that. So I hesitate to use the word immediately, but I read that book and I felt astronomically better just after I read the book. It was the most shocking recovery I've ever experienced in my life. And this was months in. It was like the last thing I tried. So yeah, I read it and I remember, because he talks so much about how the pain is not in your head, but the solution is not in your body. And not that if you're just throwing things at these physical symptoms when it's not a physical problem, it's like a normal abnormality. It's not going to work. So I was like, canceled all my PT, canceled every massage, canceled every single physical appointment I had. And I went on a run. And the first time it was like a little scary, and I did it again. And I remember crying and just literally saying out loud, I'm in charge. I can feel my feelings. I'm in charge. And it was like this emotional, you can't even describe how emotional it felt to be able to move in that way when I had been like crunched up, stuck in fight or flight, literally locked up for several months. And I know people go through decades of being in pain. So I feel lucky that Nicole Sachs always says your physical pain will become the biggest, littlest problem. I think is what she says. And you'll be grateful for it. And at the time I was like, oh, I spent all this money. I'm on all this pain. But like now looking back, it's changed my life. It changed how I look at literally everything in my life. It's like love versus fear. And I'm honestly so glad it happened to me because I'm a different person.
Yeah. I want to talk about this. So often it can be, I suppose, if you were feeling debilitated, because I always am intrigued that you got through 3 books really quickly as well, right?
1.5 speed on Audible.
I love it. So let's talk a little bit about this concept. I talk about this. So I told you right before we started recording that about last month, Nicole Sachs's episode came out about Mind Your Body. And we talked a little bit about this as well. But one thing she talks a lot about is that, in which you just said, it's not in your head, but you can't heal. The pain is not in your head, but the solution is not in your body, which is like a kind of a cool way to encompass it in one word. But she spends a lot of time talking in her book about it's not in your head, because if you think that, you will dismiss that immediately. And so I think part of the conversation that I want to get to is we tend to be in desperation sometimes before we consider something like this. So I'm curious if you were at all skeptical before you started listening to his stuff. You said you felt immediately better through what? Like the education just made you feel seen, validated? Because I think sometimes we're very unconscious to what's going on for ourselves. And that's the thing. Like now I'm literally looking through the world through this lens a lot when people are talking about pain, and I'm just thinking about it a little bit. I'm sure you are too. But I think that something that's concerned me, that's been on my mind for months, if not a year at this point, is the concept of unconscious stress, the stress we don't realize we're carrying. And so I want to just hear a little bit about your initial skepticism. Maybe you had none. Maybe you were like, it's no big deal if I try this book. It's just interesting that you never know, because so often people just want to be helpful. And sometimes we imagine when we were bright-eyed, bushy-tailed dietitians, maybe we wanted to be, you change your life with whatever health journey you go on, and then you want to share it with other people. I see it all the time, right? Sometimes people aren't there to receive it. And so
100%.
how thankful you are for this person who sent you this random message, because it could have just landed wrong as well. So anyway, I'm just curious.
And I've sent it to people and it's landed wrong. And I have friends who are now on the other side of healing. I have a friend who couldn't eat broccoli for 10 years without taking Beano, and now can eat broccoli because of this. And she was like, when you first sent it to me, I was like, it's annoying. It's, oh yeah, I'm going to read a book. Oh yeah, this is in my head. Oh yeah, it's emotional. It feels annoying, and it feels dismissive of real pain.
Yeah.
Even though I was someone who experienced that like intense pain. And I think we identify so much with our ailments, and it's so easy to become like obsessed with your pain. It like becomes your identity. It's like, I have back pain. Who I am. I have anxiety and all these things. And I have so much to say like on the question you said. And I also want to point out, it wasn't like I read this book, I'm cured, everything's fine. That can sometimes happen to people, and Sarno talks about this, because it's like when I read the book, for my brain, it was like the gig is up, because my brain, the whole thing is my brain's trying to protect me from feeling my feelings, because they're a greater predator than my physical pain. So let me give Alexis physical pain so she doesn't have to deal with all this stuff in her head. And I'm someone who my whole life, I have coped with being a busy perfectionist. Like, I'm not going to grieve my brother because I have a baby and I'm too busy. I'm not going to deal with the stress of my inner child stuff. I'm just going to work all the time so I never have to think about it. So it's like, I've had a life of unknowingly not completing the stress cycle, I think, even though I'm someone who like so believes in feeling my feelings. So I think when I read the book and it was like, oh, this is really common with people pleasers and type A people and high achievers, I was like, I saw myself on every page. Every story he told, I was like, it's me. And so it just felt so, obviously the initial concept is like, what are you talking about? But I love to learn, and I was so curious. What did I have to lose at that point? Like, we go to all these appointments, but we can't spend 20 minutes a day listening to a book that could change our life. You know what I mean? But I listened to it, and it just made so much sense for me. And I think my brain was like, oh, she gets it. Nicole talks about belief being like a huge, one of the three necessary components. And for me, belief was like 110%. I was like, this is me. This is exactly why I have back pain. So I think that helped turn off the pain signals. But then I had a huge relapse. So a few months later, and this was recently, I started having like really bad back pain. And then everything Nicole talks about came back. I was like, was this all not real? Is this like all a lie? And I listened to one of her episodes on relapse. It was like a high achieving woman who's a therapist herself who had all of her pain come back, and she felt like a fraud. And I realized that like with the journal speak that Nicole talks about, where I write down like my cringiest truths, I was just like doing it to get better. I wasn't like really doing it. But the first time when my back pain was terrible, reading the book like helped get rid of it. The second time my back pain came back, I like had to really go deep into the journal speak again. And like you're talking about, like subconscious stress. I'm like, what is the cringiest truth in the back of my like deepest? And for me, it was like, I'm a terrible mom. I'm so overstimulated by all my friends. I shouldn't have married my husband. Like that's not like a literal truth. I'm just trying to express the depth I had to go to fish out. What do you need to get on paper? I love my husband to death. I love being a mom. Those things. But it was like, I had to really dig deep. And so that worked. It took like weeks of journal speak, but the back pain went away. Then I got crazy IBS symptoms that I've never had in my life. So bloated, couldn't stop burping. Then I had heel pain, which is so documented on how much that's related to stress. Then I had like crazy things in my fingers that I've had for years that I never associated with TMS. So it's a sense of imperative. Like my brain was like, oh, she knows what's going on in her back. Let me give her crazy bloating. Let me give her anything so she doesn't feel her feeling. So this year has felt like, so everything that happens to me now, I'm like, it's TMS. Obviously, I'm a healthy person. I don't have a tumor. Like nothing is wrong with me. I've gotten checked out. So it's so insane now because when I feel pain or discomfort, my first thought, instead of thinking, let me Google, I had a terrible rash on my leg. That was another thing that came up. Just stuff and you can't make this up. So I feel like this year was just the most gigantic lesson in like surrendering. And now when I get a crazy symptom, I'm like, I wear it loosely. I'm like, up, my back hurts. They're up. I have a crazy rash. Like, what do I need to feel today? It's crazy because even my husband, like he's up next to him for a decade for crazy stomach pain. But he read Mind Your Body. We've been talking about this a lot, and he's off next to him. I mean, my dad, crazy static dog. No longer. It's just so powerful. Everyone that's close to me in my life, I'm like, you need to read this book.
Read this book. Yeah. Okay. I'm just going to underline some things that I heard and share some pieces because I like to type ferociously when people talk. So you talked about belief being a big deal, and belief shapes our identity. And sometimes it is our identity that we are operating out of, as you said before, right? I am a person that has this thing. And so that's the tricky thing for me. I kind of have a rule that I try not to tell people they have a problem that they don't think that they have, because it's how I'm not going to be able to do anything with someone. And education started to shape your belief because you were really identifying yourself through those things. You also, I would guess that the first time your back pain relapsed or the first time you were seeing something else, you might freak out, because a common sentiment I see with clients, it's just really interesting because I don't know, I just have worked really closely with my clients for years. And so you see patterns of how we are as humans. And so something people do is they want to close, they want this chapter to be over. They want to deal with the thing and then never deal with it again. And I think that is impossible. That if it happened once, it could happen again. So there is skills that we can learn to help ourselves work through and resolve the thing. And like you said, when you got the diagnosis, your pain went from 9 out of 10 to 12 out of 10. Sometimes that literal freak out of whatever the symptom is, when you think you shouldn't have it, it's actually the worst part. It's the most inflammatory part of it. I really identified with you talking about, and we'll go back and define TMS, and we'll talk about what journal speak is, and we'll talk about some of the tools that came up, right? And how maybe Sarno's stuff is different from Nicole Sachs' stuff. She's really advancing his work. But something I really identified with in your story is that we all have this stuff, like these ugly things that we don't want to say. And one of mine was like this terrible lie, this terrible belief I had for years was that I'm not a good mother. And I just thought I wouldn't, like literally from forever. Like I just thought, oh, I'm not going to be a good mother. I'm going to have to marry someone who's better at parenting than I am because like I didn't have X, Y, Z. We all have our reasons that we create, but it's ugly. And I had gotten to the point where I wasn't afraid to say it all the time. Like it didn't make me cry to say it anymore because I'd gone through enough healing, but it really didn't resolve until I'd gone through some like next level inner healing this year. But guess what? Just like you, I went through this stuff and I was like, wow, I feel completely different. And my stuff wasn't pain, but I was like, it was how I was showing up in my day. I was no longer angry about things that I didn't know I was angry about. I hate folding clothes. I hate cleaning up after everybody, like historically. And I all of a sudden it was just gone. I was like literally testing myself. Oh my gosh, what happened to this anger that I would have when I was rage cleaning? But when I wasn't doing that work, it just started to slowly creep back in. The old me just would reemerge, right? Like how it would show up in different places on you. And the takeaway is, this work is it's not a chapter. It's a process. It's a skill. And I think it's really interesting the way you shared. You were just going through the motions, and sometimes you have to dig in a little bit and unlayer. And we tend to fear, like we don't want to go We don't want to do uncomfortable things, right? And sometimes just excavating it or speaking this stuff can be so uncomfortable. And I think that's the resistance initially. The skepticism might just be resistance to being like, I don't want to deal with this stuff. I don't want to deal with.
Yeah, it's harder. I think a lot of people will choose the pain, the migraine, the IBS, whatever, over the feeling because it's not easy to feel it. But my biggest thing that helped me was when Nicole said, you don't have to fix it. And Sarno said this too. You don't have to solve your problems. You just have to open the door. And it's like, you don't realize the truths that are so like buried until you start doing this work. Like even this morning, and this is a journey, like you said, I'm going to fall again. I'm going to stub my toe. I'm going to get a headache. But I look at it completely differently now and I wear it loosely and I don't obsess over it. And I think like today I had a really difficult morning with my son and I like really struggled with guilt over feeling like I'm a bad mom, just like you said. And I know that's been a huge part of like my pain as well. And this morning I had this thought and it was like, I don't like myself, which that sounds really dramatic because I'm like a confident person. I love myself. But like this morning, I didn't like myself. And normally I think I would have shoved that down, but I just let myself in the moment feel I don't like myself. And it's okay. It's an ugly feeling. I feel like I'm a bad person. It's like a bad mom. And I just had to feel it in that moment. And like I was ragey and reactive and I didn't like myself, but I didn't shove it away. I just was like, I just need to let myself feel this uncomfortable feeling of that I suck. And I moved past it. I don't suck, but I did need to feel that I sucked in that moment, or I probably would have had a migraine. So I think even like with my husband, like his version of TMS, he had a vasectomy and he's had this like post-vasectomy pain that comes up when he's like really stressed. And it's so interesting because now when he has that, and he had pain recently and he was like, if I didn't have this journey, I would have been in the ER, like this whole TMS thing. And recently he was having the pain and I was having a little back pain. And we were both like, I feel good. What's going on? I can't think of anything that's wrong. But that curiosity to me is like the biggest sign of progress because old us would have been like, Advil, go to the doctor, which again, I take Advil. I go to the doctor. I'm not saying those are bad things, but I'm in charge. Like you can look within yourself and look what's going on emotionally before just putting the power in someone else's hand and being like, numb my pain with an injection or give me something that'll make this go away. It's like, it's never going to go away if you don't deal with the root cause, which is so wild that it's like, could be emotional. Yeah.
But it's not in your head. It's real pain, which is what TMS technically stands for. So I'll just acknowledge that because I can never remember what TMS stands for because you use it and it's wordy. TMS is tension myositis syndrome, which is just something coined by Dr. John Sarno, who is now passed, but he was I think, psychiatrist maybe. But it was just a condition where physical pain would present or stem from unconscious emotional stuff. And maybe this is like why I've just been
literally like I was going to say, it's actually like an oxygen debt in certain parts of your body that leads to pain. So I think a lot of people when they hear about this, they struggle because it sounds very like woo and not scientific, but obviously mind body medicine has so much research, but I thought it was interesting that there's actually this lack of oxygen that happens in certain parts of the body when there's this pain.
It is hot weather season, and there is probably no better time than now to make electrolytes part of your daily routine. Electrolytes help you make energy and help get hydration into the cell so you aren't just peeing out what you put in. I've been drinking electrolytes for at least 5 years, and I'm always looking for a great tasting, high quality powder just to change up the flavors. This summer, I'm doing a lot of Electrolyte Supreme from Jigsaw. It's got a great complementary vitamin and mineral profile beyond the classic electrolyte minerals of potassium, sodium, and magnesium without any sugar or artificial colors. It tastes great, and it's probably my go-to for my kids, especially the lemon lime flavor as a hydrating lemonade for summer. You can get 10% off every single order at jigsawhealth.com with the code LESSSTRESSED10. That's LESSSTRESSED10 to take 10% off of all of Jigsaw's incredible products, from Electrolyte Supreme to potassium and adrenal cocktails to cod liver oil and beyond. So go get yourself now and start hydrating.
Funny about that?
Yeah, go for it.
I was just going to say, it's funny you're saying that because obviously Nicole, I can't remember if Sarno said this too, but like the treatment is the journal speak. 20 minutes, which I never actually did 20 minutes, a little shorter, and then like 10 minutes meditation. And when I don't do this every day anymore, I haven't done journal speak in a while, but like when I'm in acute, terrible pain, I'm doing it every day. And I know at some point I'll probably have to go back to it, but I looked so forward to it was so crazy. It became like my safe place. I'm like, when I would get in an argument with my mom, instead of freaking out on her, I'm like, later, I'm just going to have the best journaling session. And that was a message of safety for my brain. And with the breathwork piece, when I would meditate, which I admittedly had not done in a while, I remember thinking, this is the only time of day I take a deep breath. If I don't meditate, I am not taking one deep breath. Even talking to you, I was like,
not so different from you. When I started doing nervous system work and coaching, one of the most profound changes, I hope that some people can laugh when they hear me say this, but some people will agree. They'll say, oh, I see that difference on you. Because I had colleagues say, oh, I see this. My rate of speech slowed down. And I stopped talking so fast, which I later realized that actually was just, if you met any of the women in my family, they'll speak quickly. So I would speak really quickly. Sometimes I would feel like I would not even catch a breath, but that was really communicating stress. And I would do that all day long with clients. I was excited. I didn't think it was stress, but that was I didn't have a chance to get curious about it because I totally didn't realize it until I just slowed down. And guess what? It's all fine. Like I get the same things done. I don't have to talk that fast. But what I appreciate what you said, because I think there's a couple of main themes that were just from what you just talked about. And one was how you saw yourself shifting out of maybe like this desperation and fear, but instead into curiosity. And that's what I see. Sometimes I can't verbalize it on someone where I see them like intelligent people go straight to action. They're like, this happened, so I did this. And I'm like, oh, okay, actually that's fine. But let's like stop and assess how we're like thinking, feeling, et cetera about it. Because that's going to create the type of action you take, but it's going to just build to the overwhelm. So I just want to underline the curiosity as a sign of progress. And I think that this overall process, maybe one of the many reasons I appreciate it so much is it's putting you back in charge. It's giving you a seat at empowerment instead of disempowerment, because unfortunately, most of our stuff with health kind of stems out of disempowerment, right? It's relying on someone else to tell you what's wrong. And I think that there's a place for all of that, but I think that the real beauty, the real freedom is the curiosity of self, learning yourself, and coming from a place of empowerment, which was more of an underlying theme that I heard you talking about right there.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that because it's been the most empowering thing I've ever done. I feel like I told you when I was running, saying I'm in charge. I talk to my brain now. Like if I'm getting a headache or if I'm getting back pain, I'm like, I know what you're doing. Don't even go there. Don't you even? I'm like, I will feel what's in my head. You just pause right there. And I just go deep. And it's not always immediate, but even the other night in bed, I was laying there and my heel started hurting. And I was like, I laughed. I'm like, I'm serious. Come on. And I just like, it's funny. It's not obviously like pain is horrible and it can ruin your life. But I think for me, it's gotten to a point where like I laugh at it, even if it really hurts, all these things. But I think what Nicole, that stuck with me is her saying, and continue. So it's okay, your back hurts, this hurts. And that sounds like it's coming from a place of privilege because it's like, what do you mean? I can't even move. How can I continue? But I really had to practice like teaching my brain, like, I'm not going to obsess over this pain. I know what it is. I'm going to do my best to forget about it because likely in a few hours, it will be gone. And I'm not just going to let this stop my day because I'm in charge and not just create anything.
That's the empowered Alexis version that was coming through for sure. All right. So I want to go back to you starting this process. And I appreciated that you said, oh, I never really did 20 minutes and I don't do the meditation now, because that is just very nice to hear the honesty. And I think something that's a little bit tricky to navigate is a lot of times there's some overwhelm at play. Sometimes there's capacity is limited. The plate is full. The days are full. It's like, I can't do another thing for myself. And I just want to know what this looked like at the beginning. And maybe, I think since you listened to Dr. Sarno's work first, maybe there's room to say, did you start doing some practice from Dr. Sarno and then change it as you got to Nicole Sachs, or did you start in the same way? So I just want to hear how this started to unravel for you. And this wasn't really that long ago, right? It was last fall.
It was last fall. Yeah. But it's not over. It's a journey, like you said. I think so. It's a little hard for me to remember because I read Sarno and then I read Mind Your Body. I was so excited to read it when it came out. But I think that Nicole dives a lot more into, I think, treatment with her journal speak. I can't really remember. I know the last third of Sarno's book is about treatment, but I honestly don't remember what it was. But with him, again, his book helped me so much open this giant door of, oh my God, I'm in charge. I can do this. So when it came back and I had to do journal speak, because I was like, okay, it's not working. What's next? Like in my daily life, what it looks like was I had to get up at 5 and I'm not saying you have to get up at 5, but for me, I had to get up early and do journal speak, or I would do it at night. And
did you have to overcome some of your own baloney to do this? Were you trying to do it, but you were like, oh my gosh, I didn't do it?
It's a lot of sitting down and being like, am I doing this right? I'm just writing random stuff. Isn't even doing anything. I'm wasting my time. I'm so tired. The meditation was harder for me than the journaling. Just like anything, you got to sit down and just do it. The hardest part is getting. I would sit down and do it. I would oftentimes things would come up that I never thought it would. And I just told myself the only wrong way to do it is to not do it. Just go. Doesn't have to be 20 minutes. This isn't about perfection. Just write until you feel like you've written some stuff. And I would write things and I'd be like, oh, wow, I just wrote that. I just wrote the thing that I felt subconsciously for 10 years and never wanted to write. And for me, writing it felt like saying it out loud. And it was like, boom, I just wrote a cringy truth. And I feel it helped me. And then the meditation, I know it's hard for me to sit for 10 minutes and meditate, which makes sense for my personality. It was really good for me. But that was like, oh my God, I'm breathing. Like what you said about talking fast. I talk at like a million miles an hour. So that really resonated. But again, I didn't have to do it like all the time. It's not every day I'm doing 20 minutes of journal speak and 10 minutes of meditation. I think it would have been wonderful if I kept with it. But for me, it was like, it just wasn't something I kept up with. But if I'm ever in a ton of pain, I'm like, oh man, I got to journal. Like recently when I was having horrible IBS symptoms, Jeff was like, when you journaling? My husband. And I'm like, let me do it before we watch the show. And I just laid down and I'm like, you got to get it out. So it's like this really amazing tool that I have in my back pocket. And I really try to go about it not with a perfectionistic mindset, if that makes sense.
Oh, it makes perfect sense. I always think that I'll just comment on this meditation because I always used to be like, I can't meditate. And that's what I found breathwork. I thought it was really beautiful because it was distracting. It was like, there's cues, there's music. It does something in my brain, but I get the same benefits. And I also think it's such a powerful assessment to ask yourself, how do I feel when I sit here without anything for 3 minutes? What kind of discomfort comes up? I'm just saying 3 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever. It's like very telling about us, right?
Yeah. And it's like doing. Yeah, for sure. And I think when I was meditating, like, okay, let the thoughts just flow through you. It's like, I really had to surrender. It was like, I was at rock bottom and I just had to like just surrender. And so I would just sit there and it was like the epitome of feeling my feelings because I would like feel a thought and I'd just be like, cool, continue. It was like the most, they really go together. I think it's also like, you just wrote down some really horrible things. Now go do something calming. Yeah. And I think ultimately it's like such a metaphor. It's like permission. Journal speak really gives you permission to feel things that maybe previously felt like you weren't even aware that you didn't feel like you had permission to say it out loud or to write it down.
I know it's hard. It's almost interesting for you to say that out loud, but there's so much that we seek permission for. It's just one of those traits that we see a lot come up with humans, right? It's, oh, I can't say that I feel like a bad mother out loud because then it feels true, right? It's like, I'll just keep thinking it for my entire life. That'll be totally different.
Exactly. Yeah. And so much like inner child stuff. It's wild. Yeah.
So when I talk a little bit about when you got started, you started journaling, and I'll just share also, like I'd gone through a lot of inner healing work recently. I mentioned this and I was no longer rage cleaning. I was literally observing myself like, oh, I used to get frustrated with my family about this thing if I asked them to unload the dishwasher 12 times. And I just let it roll off. I was like, what is going on? I knew what was going on because I've been doing like specific things very similar to this. And there was some times where I woke up and that old version of me showed up. And so I would go out and I would just like ugly for a few minutes. And it was like this freeing thing. And I just only share that because it's just a helpful, it didn't have to be perfect. It wasn't. And I think that there is always more to do. That's what I'm really taking away from it is, oh, there's more that just keeps coming up. I want to hear about, she talks a lot about no timelines, but I want to understand how you knew you were on the right. Maybe you were already invested because you believed, right? That's what you said. I believed. And so I'm curious how long you were in practice before you started to see some things shift for you.
For me, I feel really lucky because I read Sarno's book and I like immediately felt a dramatic decrease in pain, which I know that sounds wild, but for me, it was like literally I read it and I was just dumbfounded about how much better my body felt. I also started, I remember the first time I do reformer Pilates. And I just remember the first time you're so scared to do anything physical when you're in so much pain. And his whole thing is you not doing what you're doing is you're not in charge. It's like that's just you saying it's a physical problem. And I was like, okay, let me go take this one step further. I'm going to go to a Pilates class. And my back first started hurting in a Pilates class, also mind you. So this was like this felt like a very dangerous place. And I went back into the class and I didn't have pain. And it was the most remarkable thing. And I used to have a lot of back pain doing Pilates also. And now I don't. So I think also, so like that, again, that was really fast. I felt really lucky. But then life happened. Life got lifey, as Nicole says. And like a month later, my back was in a really bad place again. And that's when, again, I would have to do journaling. I would have back pain for a couple weeks at a time. It was never the severity of the initial like attack where I was like so incredibly shifted, but it was bad. And I thought it brings up a lot of dread and a lot of doubt. But I just kept telling myself, like, it's the human condition to feel pain in your mind, in your body. And how can I deal with this? And then, yeah, like feeling even other symptoms that I'd never had before in my life, like this crazy rash on my leg and this crazy finger pain and everything it wanted at me. It was hard. So it's like weird because I had this very quick release the first time. And then I had my brain just being like, I'm going to keep moving this around, which was extremely humbling. And I am honestly currently dealing with like my back's been feeling a little bad. So I don't want that to sound discouraging. Oh, it's just never going to go away. But it's also like life is life. And I don't look at it. I don't let it ruin my life. I still work out. It's like in the background. And honestly, as I'm hearing you talk, I think I need to get back to journal speaking meditation because even just I felt so much rage in motherhood lately that it's like even having this conversation, I'm like, it really makes sense why my back is hurting because I'm having I need to ugly right. I love how you said ugly right. I think that's the best way to describe it. So yeah, even it's like we're always learning something because I haven't been doing journal speaking. As I'm saying that, hello, it's probably time.
I think one of the reasons I appreciate this modality is because I integrated live nervous system work with clients a minimum of 2 years ago. So there's breath work, there's other coaching to just help process through the overwhelm stuff, all of that stuff without over describing it. But the challenge is, what about in between that? What are we doing for our stuff in between? And this is so funny. I think I asked you about your openness to this. I think for me, it just made sense because I've done other writing exercises, but really my original writing exercises started in 7th grade when I thought my world was upside down and all these things. And I just remember it being so healing at that time. And here I am like a bajillion decades later, years later. And I'm coming back to this thing. What can I do every day where it's like I give something to myself if I want to, which is why I appreciated you just saying I don't do it all the time. And I'm still navigating some things, but I'm not debilitated. I think the inconvenient truth is like, isn't it interesting how things come up at very inconvenient times? Or when it's raining and it's pouring, right? Like, unfortunately, the sucky thing is like, we're motivated to change in our desperation. I say this all the time on the podcast, right? We are motivated to change by inspiration or desperation. And Sarna's book was inspiring to you, but really like you were moved to read the book through desperation and it landed right when someone recommended it to you. So it's tricky. It reminds me of there's physiological reasons, like you said about the TMS. It's like there's physiological changes with the oxygen starvation essentially, or like the oxygen debt. And when I think about having stress, I always give people this example. that everyone's experienced like cramming for a test in college, right? And staying up late and then getting sick the next day, haven't they? Or like a lot of people are, where you have this stressful event and then you get sick. The stress is just suppressing your immune system. It's protecting, like it's doing all these other things. It's reprioritizing other things. So naturally, something my coach has said recently is, of course that would happen, right? Like, of course it would happen. It's not like why is this happening to me? It's just, oh, that makes sense. Of course that would happen. Why wouldn't your body do something else with the thing that it didn't get processed? Even though it feels a little weird because it's intangible and this life that we lead now, we're just like looking to shove things. I resonated with a lot of things you said as well. And I see it with my own high achieving clients. Like constantly, they're like, so smart. They just move to action. I was like, oh, I don't know how to describe this. There's some unconscious stuff here yet. It's going to keep showing up in different places. And when we stop resisting it and get curious about it and be open to the fact of what am I to learn here? Because the first time it's totally cool, like to be pissed about learning from the thing. And as you start to unravel yourself, it's wow, I'm really glad I forgave that person I didn't know I needed to forgive. In my journey more recently, where it's like, damn, it's been very interesting. If someone's listening to this and I heard you say that your husband read the book, and I immediately thought of the people who are like, oh, my husband wouldn't do that, or I don't feel supported. What's your advice to someone who might be skeptical about the mind-body connection, or someone who's tried everything, or someone that doesn't feel supported, any one of those things? Because you've been recommending this wholeheartedly to others, right? Because your experience is now helping others, right? Hurt people, heal people. And so you're spreading that. And what would you want to share with the listener if they're feeling like, wow, what she's talking about feels a little resonant with me, but I'm a little skeptical, or I don't feel supported, or whatnot? They're running it to emotional blocks.
I think like what I always say is, what do you have to lose? It's reading a book. It's not like I'm saying, go do these 7 things. It's not like I'm saying, go to PT 3 times a week, go get this injection. That's so much harder. So I think that, I do think, like you said, you have to come to a point of either you have intense curiosity or desperation. When someone actually sent me this, the girl on Instagram, I had no idea what it was at all. She's just, I think this is what you have. You should read the book. And I was like, okay, I'll do anything at this point. And the other part, I think, is looking at it like, if you just stand back and you're really objective and you look at being super resistant to this, like that's just a tactic of your brain to keep you safe in pain. Your brain doesn't want you to figure it out. Like it all just, if you think about it, like your brain thinks you're safer being in physical pain than feeling your feelings. So of course it's going to be resistant. And our brain wants us to do what's comfortable. And that's what we're used to. And this for most people is like very far off the spectrum of what we're used to. So you really have to work against how you're wired to do the different thing. Same thing with like getting up earlier than you want. It's uncomfortable. This is all uncomfortable, but it's way more comfortable than doubling over in pain. Yeah, I think my husband saw my transformation and he was like, oh my God, of course I'll read it. Like that was miraculous. Same with my dad. I've never seen anything like this. I got to read it to fix my own stuff. So I think some people are more excited about the potential and some people are like, it feels a little like almost offensive to be like, how dare you assume that my insane chronic pain can be cured by feeling my feelings? It's insulting, the thought of it, right? When you don't understand what it is, but you don't know what you don't know. I don't think any of us can necessarily convince someone else to do this work. I think that's really like an inside job. But I think if you're feeling your own skepticism, if any part of this relates, like what's the worst that could happen? You read it and you throw the knowledge out the window. But it's a short read. It's an interesting read. And it takes the same time as going to a doctor appointment. Why are we so much more willing to go to?
Yeah. So one really great thing about our own growth is that it often informs how we're presenting, showing up in our work and in the world. And I know you said that this work has really somehow even helped with and that's what happened to me was, oh my gosh, like what we're doing nutritionally, chemically, it does matter. But like you will still be stuck in certain places if we don't deal with some of this other piece where it's like this roadblock or it limits the speed of healing or the rate of healing. And so I know that this has also influenced your current work. And so will you share how it has influenced your current work, working with families and whatnot, with whatever you do at this time?
Yeah. So I work with mostly women with young kids, but all kinds of people on like planning healthy meals for their family, nourishing their family, making healthy recipes, making it feel more doable and practical. My blog is all healthy recipes, so it's an extension of that. But I see so often it's almost like jumping the gun to just say, oh, you can't eat these 10 different things and you're dealing with all this discomfort in your stomach. And let's plan next Tuesday's dinner. It's no, rewind. I just find so much. I spend a lot of my calls talking about mindset and just like getting curious, because obviously the psychology of how we eat. Nicole talks so much about food, like food intolerances too, which is fascinating to me. I think in today's political climate, I don't even want to say political climate, just in today's climate, food fear is like really taken off. I feel like more than ever, everyone's so afraid of different foods. And then people think, oh, I can't eat the 10 different things. It makes me feel bad. Of course it does. You're so afraid of it. You're just like eating fear. Long story short, the work, I see it so much now. It's like that syndrome of once you see like, you get a blue car, all these blue cars. So now when I work with women, it's just this like really powerful like depth that gets added, like unexpected. You go in just wanting to feed your family healthy food. And it's, wait, let's rewind, because you are actually there's a lot here that we can also work on that will make, your life a lot healthier besides just like planning meals for your family,
Totally. Alexis, where can people find you online?
My blog is hummusapien.com. Instagram's hummusapien. Yeah, it's all there.
It's all there. Nourished family meal plan or prepped meal planning guide, I think, is on your website. So if people are
my meal plan guide's on there.
I know it's a little random because we're talking about other stuff, but I just appreciate you coming and sharing your story. I think that this is testimony of, hey, here's what's possible. And the whole goal of this podcast is to share things that are possible, right? Sometimes things we haven't thought about yet that haven't really entered our sphere. That's how I always think of this particular work, is my goal is to show you what is possible. And so your testimony just supports that, not just from, it is interesting, right? Because we just had Nicole on the podcast, but her testimony is different as someone who's like truly advancing the work. And then here you are, a human with stuff. Yeah. And here you are as a product of doing the work. And it's also imperfect. And so I appreciate you sharing like the positives and the negatives, because life is 50-50, right? It's not just easy rainbows and butterflies all the time. So thank you for being so honest and for sharing your story with us today.
Exactly. I'm glad to get the word out. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Just keep breaking.